Kennedys is one of the most influential families in American history. The family has had a president, many senators and congressmen, and many ambassadors. The Kennedy family have been involved in politics since 1884, when Patrick Joseph Kennedy was elected to the U.S. House of Representatives. Despite the family's long history of commitment to the country, they hadn't reached full prominence until John F. Kennedy was elected to the presidency in 1960. However, the family, with so much ambition and success, also came with tragedy. The Kennedys have suffered through assassinations, scandals, accidents, suicides, and etc. They have certainly endured so much pain and loss, and unfortunately, they still face tragedy, with Soros being the most recent loss of the Kennedys due to an accidental overdose. Because of these unfortunate circumstances, this has led to people to believe that there is a curse which has believed to have been caused by a variety of reasons. So in this video, I'm going to talk about the infamous Kennedy curse. And in this video, I will discuss the major victims of the so-called curse. I'm going to talk about some of the explanations, and I'm going to give you my stance on the curse. Now we start with Rosemary Kennedy. She suffered from many challenges like intellectual disability, mood swings, and violent outbursts. Now, Joseph Kennedy worried that she would hurt the family's political career, so in November 1941, he had the doctors perform a lobotomy to fix these issues. However, the lobotomy was a disaster, which caused her to be institutionalized for the rest of her life, not being able to talk and barely even walk. To add to this, the family never knew of what happened to her for 20 years. She would die of natural causes in 2005. Joseph Kennedy Jr. was the oldest child out of the 9 Kennedy children. He was seen as the man in the family to become president. However, his future would be cut short during World War II, when on August 12, 1944, he was killed while piloting the bomber, which accidentally exploded. Kathleen Kennedy Hartington was a rebellious Kennedy. She would marry Billy Hartington despite her family's objections, although he would be killed during World War II. And she wanted to marry Earl Fitzwilliam, but her mother was against it, so Kathleen decided to convince her father by taking a plane to meet him in Paris. However, on May 13, 1948, she and Fitzwilliam would be killed in a plane crash. Curiously, Rose Kennedy would say that her death was God pointing a finger at Kik and saying no. I would also like to note that Rose Kennedy was a very religious Catholic who disapproved that her daughter wanted to marry Fitzwilliam, who was a Protestant and he was already married. Joseph Kennedy Sr. was the father of 9 children, and he is the mastermind behind the Kennedys' political career in the 20th century. He was very wealthy and used his power to get JFK elected. However, his influence would be greatly diminished in December 19, 1961, when he suffered a massive stroke, which left him paralyzed and unable to speak for the rest of his life. He would die in 1969. Now, John and Jacqueline Kennedy have had a tragic history with children. In 1955, Jacqueline Kennedy suffered a miscarriage, and in 1956, she delivered a stillborn daughter, which would have been named Arabella. However, she was able to give birth to 2 healthy kids, with Caroline in 1957 and JFK Jr. in 1960. In August 7th, 1963, which coincidentally was the day JFK and his crew were rescued at sea during World War II, she gave birth to Patrick Bouvier Kennedy, and the doctors knew something was wrong when his first cry was barely audible. The baby had respiratory distress syndrome, which means he had trouble doing a normal breathing pattern, and despite the doctor's best efforts to save his life, he died on August 9th, 1963. This tragic episode brought Jack and Jackie closer together, brought attention to the disease along with neonatology, and JFK would sign a law that funded newborn research. But unfortunately, there was more tragedy in 1963. John F. Kennedy was the 35th President of the United States. On November 22, 1963, President Kennedy and Jackie went to Dallas, Texas as an early re-election campaign. On 12:30 p.m., while riding in a convertible, he was shot by Lee Harvey Oswald, and he would be pronounced dead 30 minutes later due to his fatal injury in the head. Robert F. Kennedy would lead the family's political future after Jack's death, and he has had many positions. He was a campaign manager, U.S. Attorney General, and also a U.S. Senator, but he also ran for the Democratic nomination for president in 1968. However, on June 5, 1968, after winning the California primary, he was shot by Sirhan Sirhan after finishing his victory speech. He would die the next day. After Bobby's death, Edward Kennedy would become the last brother of the 9 children. He was a senator of Massachusetts from 1963 to 2009, and he would actually escape death twice. On June 19, 1964, he survived a plane crash that killed 2 people, and Bobby would comment, "Somebody up there doesn't like us." He would be in the hospital for 5 months, and this period would cause his great interest in healthcare. Another incident he survived was the Chappaquiddick incident, which was on July 19, 1969, when he accidentally drove his car off a bridge. He was able to escape, but his passenger, Mary Jo Kopechne, didn't. This incident is controversial because he didn't report it until Saturday morning, which was many hours after the incident, which took place around midnight. Now, if he had reported immediately after the incident, she may or may not have been still alive, because she was possibly alive for a few hours while trapped in the car. This would haunt his career for the rest of his life. Kennedy would take responsibility by calling his actions indefensible, and he would also mention the Kennedy curse when addressing the incident.
Whether some awful curse did actually hang over all the Kennedys.
The tragedies would continue to go on after the 1960s, with 1973 being filled with many unfortunate incidents for the Kennedys. On July 23, 1973, Alexander Onassis, who was the stepson of Jacqueline Kennedy Onassis, would die from injuries that he got from a plane crash, and his sister would believe that his death was caused from the Kennedy curse. On August 13, 1973, Joseph P. Kennedy would be involved in a car crash, which would paralyze Pam Kelly and injure David Kennedy, who would later die from an overdose in 1984. Now, David would begin using drugs after his father, Bobby Kennedy, was assassinated. He would get addicted to painkillers while being hospitalized from the car crash. On November 17, 1973, Edward Kennedy Jr. would have his right leg surgically amputated because of bone cancer. On April 1st, 1991, William Kennedy Smith was arrested and charged with the rape of a young woman at the Kennedy estate in Palm Beach, Florida, although he was later acquitted. On December 31st, 1997, Michael Kennedy would die from a skiing accident. On July 16, 1999, JFK Jr., Carolyn Kennedy, and her sister were all killed when their plane crashed off the coast of Martha's Vineyard. On September 16, 2011, Kara Kennedy dies from a heart attack while exercising in Washington, D.C. Health Club. On May 16, 2012, Mary Kennedy commits suicide by hanging in her home in Bedford, New York. Then there's the recent death of Soroush Kennedy Hill, who died on August 1st, 2019, because of an accidental overdose. Now, with the amount of tragedies this family has faced, it is very heartbreaking and very strange to see how much the family has suffered, and also how very strange, many of their lives are also being cut short. This has led many to believe that there is a Kennedy curse. Could a family that is so successful and popular in American politics be cursed? Also, if there is a curse, what is the cause of the curse? Now, the people that believe in this curse, they have provided many explanations or causes of the curse. I have heard many ideas that range from Joseph Kennedy Sr. working with the devil to provide the family with fame, fortune, and power, to the government is causing the deaths of the Kennedys, like JFK, RFK, and JFK Jr. Now, I could focus on many of the other explanations given to why the Kennedys have this curse, but I really don't want to, because I personally don't believe in the Kennedy curse. I do acknowledge that the world we live in is very mysterious, and many of these circumstances of the tragedies are very strange. However, you also must understand the reality we live in. I do believe that there is some greater power that is influencing the world and plays a role in our lives. But we haven't really seen very supernatural stuff in our reality right now, and history has shown this. So we need to at least look at this more realistically, or at least just in this case. I find the Kennedy curse to be a superstition because of how much we focus and pay attention to them. Now, many of these unfortunate instances that the Kennedys had to endure are partially because of Joseph Kennedy Sr. He raised and molded his children to be tough players and to be overly ambitious. This led to them receiving big attention and lots of success, but there are always downsides. By raising them to be ambitious and providing them so much wealth and fame, it has caused them to be reckless. In Dallas, JFK didn't want too much security because he didn't want them to get in the way of him interacting with the people. Unfortunately, Bobby Kennedy would make the same mistake on his final days of his life in California. Also, by putting his kids in the spotlight, he not only caused the people's humongous attention on the Kennedys, he also indirectly had his children encounter danger or trouble that wouldn't have occurred if they weren't so famous. However, while I would partially blame Joseph Kennedy Sr. for some of the unfortunate occurrences that happened to the family, that doesn't mean there is a Kennedy curse. You have to realize that we all will go through the same fate, which is death. So no matter what, we will all eventually pass away. So these instances, while very tragic, they aren't very supernatural as people are making them out to be. Besides, the Kennedys can't be the only family to face this much tragedy. I'm sure there are many families that have suffered just as much as the Kennedys. So why don't we talk about them? It's because they aren't as prominent as the Kennedys. So the public fascination with them has certainly played a role in the belief of the Kennedy curse. I mean, look at the Lincolns. Many of Abraham Lincoln's children, Edward, William, and Tad, wouldn't make it into adulthood. Abe Lincoln would be assassinated, and Mary Lincoln would have a miserable life afterwards. Doesn't that mean they have a curse because they suffered through immense tragedy? No, because life can be tough and tragic. Now, some of you may be asking, what about the Kennedys' comments on the Kennedy curse? Well, they don't really believe it, or at least some of them don't. So before I explain, I must talk about Robert Kennedy and Edward Kennedy's comments on the curse. After Teddy's plane crash in 1964, Bobby implied that God may be causing these tragedies. First off, he is pretty religious, so he may see that these events were done by God for a purpose. You also have to realize that Bobby was going through lots of grief from his brother's death at the time. He was going through a rough time, and he would actually question basically everything at this time. Now, what about Teddy's mention of the curse?
Whether some awful curse did actually hang over all the Kennedys.
While he was the first Kennedy to mention the curse, that doesn't mean he legitimized it. He says he wonders if there is a curse that hangs over the family. He isn't saying it exists. He is saying that he is just questioning whether all these tragic events are being caused by some type of misfortune, like bad luck. He is just expressing his personal feelings. I would also like to bring to your attention his son's comments on the curse. Patrick Kennedy states, "No, obviously, my dad had a sense of spirituality that transcended his ability to face these problems, in a way that would have otherwise paralyzed the normal person." Edward Kennedy Jr. would add this, "The Kennedy family has had to endure these things in a very open way, but our family is just like every other family in America in many ways." So basically, while the family is very famous and influential, they are just like any other family. The Kennedy curse is a superstition that is sensationalized by the public. So basically, the media is putting too much attention on these tragedies. My thoughts can be summed up by Eunice Kennedy Shriver's words. She states, "I've come to believe that it's not what has happened to our family that has been cursed, as much as it's the fact that we've never been able to deal with it privately. There's little dignity found in living your life in so public a fashion, and that's especially true of our children. However, this burden is one we Kennedys have carried for generations. If there is a curse, surely it's that." So anyway, thank you for watching this video on the Kennedy curse. Like, I've been meaning to make this video for a while now, ever since around September, and I really wanted to make a video about the Kennedys in general. And you could probably tell that I'm a big fan of the Kennedys, mostly because, like, my profile pic is of JFK, and also, like, I made some videos on John F. Kennedy, like some of the election prediction ideas, like alternate history kind of thing. And also, I made a video on Bobby Kennedy on the speech that stopped a riot in Indianapolis. And I thought it would be time to bring back this channel because I haven't used this channel for a few years at this point, and that's kind of sad. I really feel bad for leaving you guys hanging, the people that actually watch my channel. So I'm bringing my channel back now. This time, I'm going to make more quality videos. I'm probably going to do away with those election prediction videos and maybe those, like, alternate history kind of videos. For now, at least. Like, I might return to that eventually, maybe higher quality this time, but I want to focus on more opinionated, more, like factual videos. Like, I'm planning on doing some other videos, maybe on the JFK assassination or maybe on some recent events that have occurred. So be prepared for that. I'm already writing some scripts for some history videos, so be prepared for that. So hopefully I can work on them and I can be finished with them pretty early. Maybe you'll see one April or May. It all depends on how time goes. But yeah, so thank you for watching this video, and I hope you enjoy your day. And I hope you enjoyed this video. So don't forget to like and subscribe.